Welcome to another random stuff video. I thought this time we might do the comment positivity section right at the beginning, just to mix things up a bit. So this is the part where I feature comments that perhaps made me smile or laugh, or asked interesting questions, or maybe just generally contributed to the positive vibe of the comment section on YouTube. Beginning with the Babington's leek video. Have you watched the Infinite Pickle video from Cody's Lab? It's a pretty interesting video, and I'll be interested in you maybe doing your own take on it if you're interested. Thanks for all the great content. Oh, Eva. Anyway, yes, I did see it actually, and I saw somebody tag me in the comments to say this is such an atomic shrimp thing to do, and I think they're perhaps giving me too much credit. It's a very Cody's Lab thing to do, and it was a fascinating video. I don't think I'd have thought of doing that. It was really interesting. I don't think I'm going to have a go at it myself. I don't consume that volume of pickle, for one thing. But also, I think just for me personally, I think I prefer the idea of having distinct jars of pickle. So a garlic pickle, and then perhaps a kimchi style pickle, and then perhaps something else, rather than a continuous process where everything sort of blends into the next thing. It was a really fascinating video though, and if you haven't seen it, then I'll link to it in the video description and in this card here. Today I learned that beavers are extinct in the UK. That's an interesting topic actually, because I talked about how beavers went extinct in the UK. They're no longer extinct because they've been reintroduced. So it's a really weird... So are they extinct? Did they go extinct? Does that mean they didn't go extinct? No, it doesn't. But they've been reintroduced. We've got beavers in various different parts of the country, and actually they're really good at managing flood risks, because beaver dams slow a river down and cause meanders and all sorts of things. And so a lot of rivers that have been dredged out and turned into channels and managed over the years have created flood risks for surrounding properties and surrounding land. And allowing beavers to get in there and knock down trees and create dams and divert rivers and create ponds and big areas of wetland, flood the bottom of river valleys, it's created flood mitigation, because water that falls in a watershed now can't just go gushing down a river. It has to negotiate all of these meanders and bits and pieces. So they're actually really good for managing flood risks, which is a hot topic in the UK at the moment. So yeah, let's have beavers back, and more of them, and certainly in the places where flood is a risk, including where I live. In the Babington's video I picked wild leek scapes. There's no one I'd rather watch make a dish with scapes. I guess that makes you the scapegoat. The flower buds of the Babington's leek are called scapes. There's been quite a scape theme going on in several videos this spring. So we've had pickled garlic scapes, we've had Babington's leek scapes. There are scapes coming later in this video, just in a moment, in my garden. So we're maybe not done with scapes just yet. Next one, good video as always, but what happened to the glass frying pan? I remember my parents having the glass set in the 80s and it eventually being relegated to the back of the pan cupboard. I assume it's just not very good. No, actually I found it is really good. So that Vision's pyroceramic, people call it a glass frying pan, but it's actually a transparent ceramic. It is really good, but its use is somewhat limited. It's really, really good for searing things. It's not very good for gentle frying. So making an omelette in it is hopeless because it just cooks too fiercely. But I did find it's absolutely superb for frying steak. Because the radiant heat of my ceramic hob comes straight through the pan, you get direct searing of the meat as well as the heat from the pan and from the hob. So it's really, really good at certain things, browning meat, searing things. Not quite so good at very gentle cooking. So it has its place in the kitchen and it has its time to come out, but it's not all the time. And did you do something with the mic? Or is it an unusually wind-still day? I feel like I'm used to more wind blowing its way into the mic. So no, on that video I did just use the native mic on the GoPro. I have got new mics, but I'm tending to use these only for indoor stuff now. So outdoor stuff that's done on the GoPro, I will just use the native mic on the GoPro, because I think when I'm out and about, I think the general consensus is that people wanted to hear more than just my voice. They wanted to hear the sounds of nature. Obviously, if the wind's blowing really hard, I have to do noise reduction and voice isolation so that you can hear what I'm saying. But people wanted to hear the birds chirping and, to a certain extent, the wind blowing and the gravel crunching under my feet and the waves breaking and things like that. So I'm not using these little portable mics outdoors generally now. I'm just using the native mic on the GoPro, and wherever possible, I'm not applying voice isolation, only if it's really windy. On that particular day, when I was picking Babington's Leakscapes, it was just a lovely, still spring day, and so there wasn't much wind noise because there wasn't much wind. Next, onto the batch cooking video. So the mushroom trick works really well if you want crispy bacon without it burning. So the mushroom trick, I should explain probably what that is. So this is where you start frying mushrooms in a frying pan, and then you add some water, and you poach the mushrooms, and then you evaporate the water, and that all of those flavours that cook out of the mushrooms cook back into them, and you get really, really tasty mushrooms. They're very difficult to overcook mushrooms anyway, so actually cooking them longer gets more flavour out of them. And so if part of that cooking is done in water, it just means that you can cook them longer before they become dried out little crisp bits of burnt stuff. So that's the mushroom trick, is fry, poach, fry. So you can do the same thing with bacon, and I've tried this actually since this comment, and it works really well. So you lay the bacon in a pan, you fry it a little bit, and then you just put a very, very thin layer of water, not even enough to cover the bacon, and poach the bacon. That fully cooks it, and then the water evaporates, or you can actually tip the water off if it's taking too long, and then fry the bacon again, and you get really lovely, evenly cooked bacon, evenly crispy, and it doesn't tend to buckle and twist as much. It tends to stay flatter, which is great. So yeah, the mushroom trick works for bacon. I wonder what else it works for. Onions, perhaps. Used to make mushroom bouillon by putting mushrooms in a paper bag and letting them dry out in the fridge until they were all wizened. Then simmer them in water. It produced a nice bouillon. So yeah, so if you can dry even shop bought mushrooms, even the white mushrooms that you buy from a supermarket, if you can dehydrate them, it just intensifies the flavour so much. I've done that in the past when I was having no success in foraging at all. I just went and bought a couple of big packs of white mushrooms from the supermarket, sliced them, put them in my dehydrator and dried them out. And just dehydrating cheap, ordinary mushrooms like that, they are a different thing when they've been dehydrated and then rehydrated. The flavour is just very much more intense. But yeah, you can dry mushrooms by just neglecting them in the fridge. If they're in a plastic punnet, they'll tend to rot, but if they're in a paper bag or just open on the shelf, they will just dry out gradually and go all shriveled. Next one, I've somehow realised that you don't own a stand mixer. Is there a particular reason for this? Does the hand mixer do that job well enough? I guess it must. So yeah, we don't have a stand mixer. I probably, in an ideal world, I'd have one of everything, but a stand mixer might be useful because I could start off a bread dough and just leave it to knead it for me. The hand mixer does a good job of that, actually, with the dough hooks, but I don't have a stand mixer because I don't really have room for a stand mixer. It's a very small kitchen, both in terms of the worktop space and actually the storage space we've got in there and in the other rooms. So whenever we buy an appliance or add something to the kitchen, we have to think really, really hard about whether we really need it. In fact, I think what we'll do is talk about the general idea of why don't you just get a thing. So yeah, I really value your comments and suggestions and questions and everything, but there is a really weird thing for me from where I'm sitting to be on the receiving end of so much advice and so much suggestions. It can sometimes be really strange for me, and I'm not saying stop. Please don't feel that I'm complaining or anything like that, but just as a little window into what it's like from this end. It's so strange when not a day passes without somebody saying to me, you should get this specific thing or get a thing. Here's on the screen, scrolling past as I've been talking about this, some of those comments. Like I say, I'm not complaining and I don't want people to stop doing that. But it is very, very strange for me because I see the accumulation of all of that. Whereas obviously those people leaving those comments, that's just one thing that they said one time. But when it all adds up at this end, it's super, super weird. And the majority of those suggestions, I'm never going to follow them because if I did, I wouldn't have room to move in the house. I would have so many things. But also a lot of the time, I've already solved the problem in a different way. So like people often say you should get a blender, but I've got the stick blender and it works perfectly fine. It's a little bit awkward. When I made the 100% apple pie, for example, I had to improvise a little bit to get that blender to make apple dust. But it's not worth me going out and buying an expensive high-speed blender for one video or even 10 videos when I've got a thing that blends already. I think it comes back to one of the principles that's been ingrained into me for a long time is use what you have. When I'm faced with a problem or I'm faced with a thing I have to do, the first place I go and look is, okay, have I got anything that does this already? Have I got anything that could be made to do this already? Because 9 times out of 10 I have. I've got something which maybe not the perfect tool for the job, but it is a thing that does the job. And especially if it's a video where I'm doing a thing that I'm never going to do again, or very often at least, it's not worth me going and buying the best tool to do that one specific job. So yeah, a stand mixer, I think a stand mixer, if I was doing a lot more baking, I would probably prioritize a stand mixer. I do find though that the hand mixer, dough hooks or the beaters on a hand mixer does a perfectly good job. Just a little comment about onions, righteous amount of onion on that bad boy. This was my cheese and onion pizza that I made when Jenny was away. And it's a thing that I do tend to make when Jenny's away because I like a lot more onion on things than Jenny does. And so, I mean, I can always make my own pizza with onions on it, but I do love to make a pizza with a thick layer of onions on it and then cheese on top, just a cheese and onion pizza. Really nice. I really like it and surprisingly delicious. Hello. Do you want to come have a cuddle? Hello, baby. Oh, come up here. Oh, what have you been up to then? Woofing in the garden? You all right? Okay, you can go then. Right, where were we? On the last random stuff video, I tried making a breakfast muffin with a hot cross bun, and it wasn't actually all that great. Here's a comment: hot cross buns with lamb and a little gravy. Just trust me on this. I'm not sure I do, actually. That sounds like it could be one of those things that's either wonderful or you could be trolling me. I suppose with lamb being a traditional food that is eaten around Easter, there might be an opportunity to try that next year, hot cross buns with a bit of lamb and gravy. Yeah, maybe I'll give it a go, but I have to be careful here because if I get into the habit of trying people's weird food suggestions, I just know that people are going to troll me. And I'm not completely convinced this is not one of those, but maybe I'll try it. Noted for future possible investigation, thank you. I'm going to try to make that crumble, but with Jamaican ginger cake. And I think that sounds a fine idea. So this was apple crumble, and I put Christmas pudding into apple crumble. And it makes a fantastic winter crumble. It's really, really nice. And it's a great way of using up leftover Christmas pudding, if there is any such thing. But any kind of spiced cake, I think, would be nice mixed with apple in an apple crumble. And ginger cake sounds very fine. I might give that one a go. 2 questions in one comment here, or rather a statement and a question. As for you musing on the dead space of items in a canister, so this was about how things stack when I was weighing rice. It's a known thing in packing, known as the kissing problem. How many like items can and should kiss each other in a box? And how many things can you fit in a box? And how it's not always an even number or linear. So yeah, sometimes, depending on the ratio of the size of the container to the size of the items you're packing in it, you don't always get optimal packing. So if you've got a narrow container, then you've got to put objects in it that are maybe just a little bit over half the diameter of the container. They're not even going to stack next to each other. They're going to stack like that. And there's going to be a lot of wasted space. I was actually thinking about this because I went to a little beachfront restaurant and I had a half pint of prawns. And pints and half pints of prawns are a common way to buy cooked shellfish, especially in a seaside town. And you literally get a pint or a half pint glass with cooked prawns with their shells in them. And I was just thinking that actually if you order a pint of prawns, you probably get more than twice as many prawns as you do in a half pint, just because of this kissing problem. Because the prawns are, you know, this big, and they're a weird, odd shape. And a half pint glass is not the bottom half of a pint glass. It's a smaller diameter glass. And so they probably don't pack as well in the half pint glass. I probably should try that sometime and order a pint and a half of prawns and count them. It would be a very good excuse just to eat a pint and a half of prawns, wouldn't it? I might do that sometime and just say, no, I have to do this. It's for science. Anyway, the other part of this thing is no way to sugarcoat this. Quasi-related to foraging. What is the legality of dumpster diving? Or skids, as I think they're called over here. Have you ever done any trash picking? I don't think they are called skids here. Skids, I think skids would mean a cardboard box on a pallet, otherwise known as a gaylord actually, but a cardboard box on a pallet is sometimes called a skid, or sometimes just a very cheap disposable pallet is called a skid. But anyway, yeah, dumpster, I think they're just called bins actually. So the big bins that you get out the back of shops, people do go dumpster diving. Or bin diving in this country. Not something I've ever really done. In a lot of cases, in order to go and pick from the bins behind a supermarket to try and pick out things they've thrown away but are still good, you would have to trespass on their property. Or actually, in some cases, you would have to break and enter their property because they keep their bins in a locked compound. So obviously, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to frown on anybody who does, because if you need the food, then I tend to think the moral good of rescuing food that was going to go to waste, especially if you need that food, overrides the trespass if you're not causing any specific damage. Just my opinion, and don't quote me on that. But yeah, I know I don't tend to do that. I think it probably wouldn't be a great idea to do that on a video, because I'd just be providing evidence of me doing things that could get me into trouble. People do get into trouble for doing it. There is all sorts of complex, weird law around it about whether the stuff that people put in the bin is still their property, or whether it's actually by that point become the property of the company that collects the bins, because it's not the same as abandoned property. If you put something in the bin, you're not abandoning it, you're consigning it to someone else. Not something I've done really, and also not something I think I have the great opportunity to do. I can't think of any places where there are bins that I'd have access to that might have good stuff in them. Also, that is one specific area where other people's needs are greater than mine. And I think I should probably leave those. I think if there are bins where those things are available, they're probably already known about by people who have a greater need for the stuff in there than I do. So I think I'd prefer to leave it for them. Next one, which was a comment on me commenting on the fact that people make weird comments about me taking a trolley when I'm doing a very small amount of shopping. And this is a really good point, and we should all pay attention to this really. So trolley. If, like me, you have extensive polyarticular rheumatoid arthritis in knees, hips, wrists, etc., a trolley helps a great deal. Try using standard walking aids that put your body weight on your wrists. At least with a trolley, you can lean onto it with your forearms, taking some stress from your lower limb joints without transferring it to your hands and wrists. Really good point, actually, isn't it? And there is this other point that comes out of this that actually I've heard other people say, and I think it's a really good thing, and I think we need to embed this a bit better. When you see somebody doing a thing and you think, that's stupid, why are they doing that thing in that stupid way? Why are they using that stupid tool for that simple job? Are they stupid? It's probably better just to zip for a moment and chew on the idea of, what is the reason why they're doing that? Do they need to do that because of some disability or some reason that I am fortunate enough not to have to endure? Just to reflect and perhaps be grateful that you don't have to do it that way and you don't need that tool. For myself, I just find that using a trolley is just more convenient. Usually because one of my hands is holding a camera. And so if the other hand is holding a basket, a hand basket, what am I going to pick the items up with? And there is nothing heroic about using an inadequately small basket for shopping that could more comfortably go in a trolley. I do often find that I sometimes just take a trolley even when I don't expect to need one as well, because there's this thing where if I go shopping with Jenny, very often she'll say, oh, don't get a trolley, just get... Hey, just be quiet. Okay. I know that your carpet... She's carpet swimming down here. Okay. I'll show you what's going on down here. Don't get tangled up in the wires, all right? You all right? Good. Now, Daddy's busy. So where was I? I do find sometimes I'll go shopping with Jenny and she'll say, oh, don't bother getting a trolley, just get a basket. We're only getting 3 things. And so I know from experience that when we get in there, I'm carrying the basket and she'll say, oh no, we do need potatoes. And so we put a sack of potatoes in the basket, and it's just like, that's not very comfortable anymore. And we'll get further around the shop. And we do need some, we do need one of those enormous bottles of washing liquid. So that goes in there as well. And we need squash as well. So we get a bottle of Vimto, a big bottle of Vimto, and a big bottle of lemon squash. And the basket is now, at this point, the wire handles of the basket are starting to cut into my hands. And I wish I'd taken a trolley. Whereas it's never the case when you take a trolley that you think, oh, I wish I'd taken a basket, because it doesn't matter. So yeah, I tend to take a trolley now, even when I think I probably only need a basket. Anyway, finally in the comment positivity section, we've got lots and lots of requests for garden updates. Here are a few of them on the screen here. And so that's going to be the next part of the video. So off we go now to the garden. So now that the littlest watercress farm is gone, that was here in front of the greenhouse, I've got a little bit of space I could potentially use for growing something else. It'd be nice if we had another one of these raised beds, but we don't have any more of that stuff, and I'm not quite sure you can buy it in small amounts like that. So I've got an idea for what I'm going to make a planter out of here, and it is this. This is a 200 litre plastic barrel. You can get these for kind of free or cheap on Facebook Marketplace. Sometimes they've had nasty things in them, and that could be a problem. Sometimes they've just had like AdBlue for fuel in it, and they could be rinsed out. This one came from a car wash and it had soap in it, so it's quite easy to wash that out and be relatively sure that we haven't ended up with some horrible toxic taint in there. And there are 3 different ways I could use this. I could just cut the top and bottom off and use the walls as just rings. It's freestanding on the soil, open at the bottom, just like raised beds essentially, little round raised beds. I could lay this on its side, cut off perhaps the top quarter, lay it down and make it into a trough. It will need drainage on the bottom, obviously. But I think actually what I'm going to do, just cut it in half across the middle, turn the top part upside down, drill some holes, use it as 2 big round planters. Right, so we've got 2 planters. They're looking reasonably clean already, but I'm going to give them another wash out. Obviously I'm going to have to sweep up all these little bits of plastic and then make some holes in the bottom. Probably those steps not in that exact order. So obviously this one's already got 2 ready-made drain holes in it, but I think we need more than that. And also these are set up a little bit from the bottom, so I've drilled a hole here. I'm going to drill another one there. I may even drill another one in the middle. We'll see. And then the same with this one. We're going to go slightly asymmetric with this one because there's a handle there for tipping it up, so I can drill this other one here. Right, there we go. So I will dispose of those bungs now. And then we've got 2 planters with drain holes. Yeah, not symmetric, but that was on purpose. I'm going to need to clean up, sweep up all these bits of plastic and dispose of those properly. And then we'll get them in place and see what we're going to do with them. And I might just torch around the edges here just to defuzz. Just to tidy up the edge a bit. Some of it's a little bit ragged, just where it was sawn with the jigsaw. Okay, and then those are going to go there, obviously set back a little bit. So one in front of the glass, the other one in front of the water butt. The big holes in the bottom will be for drainage, but what I'll do is I'll cover them with some broken pieces of tile, and then there'll be a layer of gravel in the bottom anyway before we fill with soil and compost. But the water butt's going to have to be moved, so I will empty it. I won't waste the water. I'll put that rainwater in the other water butt, and then I'll be able to move those blocks, turn the water butt a little bit so the tap is on the other side, move it back a little bit so it's not in the way, and then these two containers can go in front of this space here, and that gives me more growing space for something that needs really nice deep roots. So we could grow carrots in here, for example. I'm not sure what we will grow, but we'll think of something. Might be just peppers this year. But first we're going to have to do something with this pipe. So I think what I think I might now that I know that this watering system is going to be a thing every year, I may actually change it. I might drill a hole through the base so the pipe doesn't have to go through the door, so it can go through the base, and then the door will slide shut properly. I can also put a proper little angle in there, make it nice and neat so it runs behind that line. On the subject of my tree babies, so down here we've got one more, I think it was a chestnut. Oh, there's a tag there, we can have a look. Chestnut, yeah, that didn't grow. Don't think we're going to see any action there at all now. This little pot here with 2 quince seedlings in it needs planting out. Doesn't look like we're going to get any more seedlings come up now, so but I need to plant those out in the nursery bed. So this is the nursery bed where I've got my walnuts and chestnuts at the moment. I've extended the watering system just temporarily to keep these well watered. The walnuts weren't doing all that well and weren't showing any signs of leaves, and I think it's because I wasn't watering them enough. So I've put a couple of sprinklers here. This is going to switch on in a minute, and you can see we've got some leaves developing now on these walnut seedlings. 1, 2, 3, 4 walnuts, 5 walnuts, 2 chestnuts, and a bit of space here. Oh, here we go. Bit of space here we can use for the quinces. It's a bit dribbly, isn't it? These are all adjustable anyway. The greenhouse watering is only coming on for a couple of minutes in the morning, and I'm just at the moment having it do this to re-moisten the soil. The soil was so terribly dry, so I'm just doing this to get some proper moisture distributed through the soil before I put my tomato seedlings in. There we go, it's stopped now. And yeah, my tomatoes just need a little bit more time to put on some more growth before I can plant them out. I've got them in individual pots now. No more seedlings coming up at the moment. I've got a cayenne pepper coming up there. Apparently these things are called seed snails. I didn't know that. So radishes doing very well. Pak choy not quite so well, but getting somewhere. Lettuce, no sign of activity at all. I don't know if lettuce take longer to germinate, but we'll keep waiting. But these ones that have got some growth on them now, every morning now, I'm just putting them out here, and they stay outdoors for the whole day, and then in the evening they go back in the greenhouse. I'll do that for a week. This is called hardening off, and it's just preparing these plants to live in a lower humidity environment. After they've had a week of that, they can be planted out. So these quince seedlings I am going to treat slightly differently from the other things which are growing in this nursery bed. I'm going to plant them in pots and then sink the pots into the nursery bed. Obviously these are plastic pots, so they're not permeable. We won't get any moisture coming through the side of the pots. It will soak up a little bit through the holes in the bottom, but mostly what the benefit of that will be is that the pots will be under the ground. They won't be exposed to direct sunlight. They won't be drying out at the edges from being too warm. And of course, being located here, I'll remember to water them when I water all the other things in this bed. So I'm going to get the quinces into those pots. Insect friend down here, just down there, is an ashy mining bee digging its little burrow. I don't know that you're going to be able to see it on camera. Right there. And there's a little solitary wasp. You know, I ought to do an insect survey in this garden and try to identify as many species as I can. I can't even see where that bee's gone now. It's somewhere down here. It's digging a little burrow. We've got a lot of these solitary bees and solitary wasps in the garden here, especially like in the grass. I quite often see them just disappearing down into little holes in the lawn. And I ought to do a diversity survey of all the insects in this garden. That would be an interesting thing to look at, to see how many different species of various insects I can find. I will try and catch a bit of footage of a bee you can actually see, rather than one where I just tell you where it went. But yeah, I won't walk through here for a little while. Actually, I'll just tread carefully on this bit, just to make sure that I don't accidentally crush that burrow. Got some nice compost I've mixed up here. Mixture of peat-free potting compost and sharp sand and coarse grit. I'll get some of that in these pots. Maybe not completely up to the top, because I need to make a cavity for the plant that's going to go in there. Like that. Oh, there's another little solitary wasp just there, look. And these solitary bees and wasps and things are definitely friends in the garden. They do all sorts of things. They pollinate things. They're just part of the kind of the food web of, you know, they'll eat caterpillars and things. They are eaten by birds and things. It's good to have all of the diversity of all these different flying insects, even if notionally they are not necessarily explicitly friend. Put some of that grit near the top there. It's for surface drainage. So here we are. This is our quince seedlings, and I'm going to try to disturb them as little as possible. But we can see that there is a root system there. I'll give that a bit of contact with that pot like that. Same with the other one. We'll just make a nice hole for it. Break away some of the kind of extraneous soil that I don't really want to take with us, and then plonk it into there like that, firm it down. A bit more soil around the top. Okay, so that one's got a label in it. And this one's going to have a label in it as well. And I push the labels down so that we don't lose the writing off them. And then these two pots I'm going to sink into the soil here, probably not to their full depth, but it will just keep the bottom of the pot in contact with soil moisture. It will encourage the roots to go downwards like that, and most of all, it will remind me to water them. Plants in pots are quite vulnerable to drying out, and so the main point of this is for me to remember to water them, and plunging them here next to the greenhouse where I will be passing regularly is probably a good way to remember to do that. Now, as to why I've done these like that in pots and these not in pots, I didn't really even think about it. If I'd thought about this more, I probably would have done the same for my chestnut and walnut seedlings, because it would have saved space. I could have packed them all together in one corner of here, and also I think it would make the eventual planting out simpler, because it's easier to plant out a root ball than it is a bare root tree. So the chestnuts and walnuts, I will have to make sure that when I do come to move these from here to their final growing positions, I'll do that when they're dormant, so I'll be able to dig them up. It won't matter too much if I
knock the soil off the roots. So we'll transplant them as bare root trees, whereas these two quinces will be planted into their final position as root balls. So I think it may be time to actually plant these radishes out now that are in this spiral wrap thing. I need 2 hands, but I'm just going to pull that out and check and see if the roots are coming out the bottom. Okay, yes indeed they are. So that is now time for us to plant some of those out. So I'm going to plant these radishes in a row along here. And in case you're wondering why I'm growing radishes like this, you're not really meant to transplant radishes. But I want these to bolt. I'm growing these for their seed pods. They're not a kind of official seed pod variety, a rat-tail radish, but they will function in that capacity. And because I want them to bolt, I'm planting them a bit closer together than you might do if you wanted them for the roots. So yeah, and they just come apart off that wrap like that, with a nice little bit of compost, and they can be transplanted or planted out without too much disturbance to the roots. So far I'm liking this method better than seed trays. Certainly seems a bit more convenient, certainly very much less wasteful of compost. The amount of compost I've used here is a tiny amount compared to what I would put in a seed tray, or even if I was going to put them in modules. And yeah, I think I might have actually almost left these a bit too late. I'm having to tease apart the roots, hopefully not doing too much damage. So yeah, as always, we'll give those a good puddle in, trying not to actually bury them in loose soil, and trying not to actually wash loose soil right over the leaves. Next door's dog barking at me, by the way, in case you're wondering. Okay, and they look a little bit ragged at the moment, a little bit kind of higgledy-piggledy, but they'll pick up. So now this water butt is empty, or nearly so, I can move that. I can just set these bricks, I can set those blocks back a little bit and make a bit of space for these tubs. The rainwater takeoff is this elbow here, which will bend round sufficiently far that it will still make it into the water butt in its new position. I just need to level out the soil here and move these blocks. So something like that, and now we've got a flat side here that I can install things on, so we can transfer some of this water back into the water butt. And actually what I'll do is I'll just test that that works. Nothing's egregiously leaking, so we should see, yeah, the water that comes down the gutter from the greenhouse goes into there, and it just runs into the top of the water butt through these holes, and that works. The other thing I would like to do here is fit this mesh door so that it slides the same as the glass door. So this is not part of the original greenhouse. This is a spare door that I got off of Facebook Marketplace because it had some glass in it, and I took the frame with me as well. So I put mesh on here. Now the original door slides on this runner here, and what it would be nice to do is find a piece of that extrusion that's long enough that I can extend it out this way to the same distance, hang this door on that, and get some runners, get some rollers so it runs in the bottom channel as well. And then I would be able to have the choice of sliding the glass door in or sliding the mesh door in. I wouldn't have to do a precarious balancing act with this thing. I mean, it's not too bad at the moment. I just put it in there and kind of hook it on top of the channel, and it does stay there. But it would be nice if that was on a runner, the same as the glass door. So that's a project I'm thinking about how to solve. It is a question of finding the right extrusion for here. It's this piece of extruded aluminium here that I need to find a piece of that that's 2 meters long, so it will go right the way across. So yeah, not exactly final positions, but those two half barrels are now going to go somewhere round about there. That's the plan. I can still access the greenhouse door. I can still access the water butt tap. In fact, I've dug away a little bit here so I can get the watering can under there properly now. That was a problem before, it didn't quite fit, but now it does. I might even put a little bit of hose on the end of there just to make it go in the can. But anyway, in case you're thinking, oh yeah, but why don't I just bolt those two doors together there so that they slide as one? Well, if I did, how would I get in? Okay, modifications to the watering system first before I can put these barrels in place, because that pipe can't run underneath them. So I think I'm going to bring the pipe in this way. The reason I didn't do that before is because obviously if it had to go through the door, there's no point it going through that side of the door, but we're going to go under. Since this is a semi-permanent fixture now, so I've dug down, there's this base here, but underneath we can tunnel through to the outside. I did think I was going to have to drill a hole through that, but I'm just going to go under. The only trouble is I've got to dig a little hole down there somewhere. Right, that should be far enough down, so when I poke this trowel through here, yeah, there we go, we've got it sticking out the other side. So I'm going to run a pipe under there, but I'm not going to bury any joints. Now I am having to take extra care here to make sure I don't get soil inside the pipes, so I fed it through with elbows and pipes and things on the end of it, so we can bury that end now on the inside, and that's just where that pipe comes up now. Then we're going to have an extra watering spike here, because I've just noticed when I was digging this hole that this corner is very dry, so we will have an extra watering nozzle here, I think, and then I just need to join that to that. I've probably got a piece of pipe the right size for that. How about that? That's perfect, more or less. Just need to pull those this way a little bit. Okay, perfect, except I've just realised also this needs to not be an elbow, this needs to be a T, because it's got to join onto the other part. It's got to loop back round to the other part of the pipe here, so we've got a ring rather than a branch. So I will find a suitable piece of stuff for that. We'll put a T joint on there instead of an elbow. It will be configured like that, I suppose. Something like that. Okay, well that ended up being a T-joint and an elbow, just because I didn't want anything sticking up, or actually I didn't want to put a kink in the pipe either. So that's that. That's looped round to there. Now I need to connect the outside, and then this outside T goes off to my watering spur for my tree babies. Okay, I can't escape the feeling that I could have done this with less joints, but I can't figure out how. So anyway, I've got two taps there, so I can turn on the greenhouse loop or the watering spur for the tree babies. I think we're good to test. Let's give it a go. So over here at the timer, just switch it on, auto watering. Don't want any hours, we do want 1 minute. Okay. That should be going. It might have a few spits and spurts because obviously I drained some water out of it when I was doing it all. Right, that's working rather nicely, actually a bit too nicely. It's overspraying the edges, so I just need to adjust that down a bit. And everything in here is working. I did end up buying a couple of pepper plants because mine are just not quite getting going. Okay, and we do need to get this nozzle started. Well, something like that. I'll find a spike to fit that on at this end. Good, I think we're good. So that's the kind of finalised. Why have we got no water over here? No water coming out of those nozzles. I will have to troubleshoot that separately. It's probably an airlock or something in it. Yeah, this lot here, it was just a case of adjusting the nozzles. For some reason, anytime you make any configuration change to this, you're changing the way the pressure works throughout the whole system. So it is actually necessary to go back through and adjust all of the nozzles. This one's going a bit too fast now, for example. And so it is a case of just going around and tweaking it and getting it back to where it should be. My hardy pepper, Capsicum flexuosum, is starting to show signs of new growth down there. The one that was in a pot has unfortunately died, but I've got some more seeds hopefully germinating. And look, seedlings coming up there. Can you guess what those are going to be? Spoilers, tomatoes, because of all of those weedy mini currant tomatoes I had in here last year. I couldn't get in here because the greenhouse just got completely overgrown with foliage. So many fruit lost. It's inevitable that we're going to have a lot of weedy tomato seedlings this year, and I'm going to weed them out. I'm not accepting volunteer tomatoes this year. Same thing here. Although those there could be Cape gooseberries. Yeah, this is a bit too vigorous, isn't it? Let's get that toned down a bit and turn that one up. That's it. Something like that. Anyway, so now there is nothing to impede me setting up these two barrels in this little corner here. Right, that's the things in their final position, or at least the position I'm going to put them in. Maybe not their final position, but anyway, their position. If I just fill those with soil now, it's all some of it's going to fall out of those holes. I'm not propping them up on bricks or anything because I think that will just cause them to warp. So, just need to cover those holes with something that's going to stop soil falling out but not impede drainage. It's probably going to be pieces of this roofing tile. Maybe smaller pieces of that. See, there's still because it's got those tabs on it, there's a gap underneath there water can flow out of, but it won't let the soil go out. We've also got various bits of broken clay pots, even more broken now, and again just put those over the holes. The curvature will allow water out without losing the soil. I didn't quite realise how many bits of broken pots we've got lurking about the place. It's a shame, but we'll make use of it. I won't smash that one up just yet. I think that's probably going to be enough. It is a shame to have to smash up, well, it was already broken, but it is a shame to have to put such beautiful things in here, but it's, in a way, it's not a shame to be using them. They've got another life now as drainage in the bottom of these buckets. We'll need some other drainage material in the bottom of there, and I'm going to use the gravel that came out of the littlest watercress farm. Probably actually still got some watercress in it, but that won't matter. Got about half of that in each one. And that'll just provide a bit of finer drainage at the bottom. Just really keep most of the soil out of contact with the bottom layer of the pot. The plants I'm going to grow in those tubs this year probably won't interact very much with the very bottom layers of the soil. They're going to be fairly shallow rooted things, so I just need to fill the bottom up with something bulky that is essentially compost. It's going to be the compost from this heap which we used to enrich the one of the vegetable plots in the previous video. So I'll just uncover this and get some of this in buckets. I don't want the really strawy stuff up from the top, but we'll have some of this slightly better rotted material from down the bottom. Good thing with this stuff is it's quite open textured, so this will help with the drainage down the bottom there. Eggshells in there from the compost, doesn't matter. That's nice. Okay, we'll have one bucket of each of those, and then I've got things like farmyard manure, some topsoil, a grow bag that I will mix up and blend and put on top. While I'm passing, actually, let's have a look at this. This is our tayberry. I don't know if you remember last year in a video I pruned this and cut it back really hard. We cut out all of last year's wood, last year's fruited wood, and trained in last year's new wood, which is what you see here, and it produced all of these little spurs off of here, loads and loads and loads of flowers. The bees are all over it, or they have been. It's not at the moment because it's just been raining, but yeah, just started to flower, loads more flower buds to come, and we're going to have a really good crop of tayberries off of this year. And there's, well, that's interesting, we've got some young growth coming there, but that's not from where we planted. The actual plant is over there, so we must have had a runner root itself just there. So we've got some fresh this year's growth coming up there. We'll probably leave that, actually. I might just leave that be, and we'll let that be another plant, even more crop. So that's well rotted farmer manure. This is just a tomato planter, a grow bag. Give that a good mix, break up the big lumps. So these grow bags are made from composted bark. Used to contain peat, but they're now peat free. And they've got just composted bark and wood chips and shredded wood pulp. Pretty good, very dry. Right, that's going to go in the top in the next layer. So we've got layers going in here. We've got the bottom layer is homemade forest compost. The next layer is going to be mixed manure and grow bag, and then the top layer is going to be mixed, probably it's going to have a bit of actual soil mixed in. Now I'm expecting that soil will wash down into the mixture. And the worms that were in there were lots of worms. In fact, that forest compost we put in the bottom was teeming with wildlife. Centipedes, wood lice, worms, all sorts of things. Some of those may eat some of my vegetables, but it's a risk I'm prepared to take, because actually having that much life in the soil is very good for decomposition of all of this organic material. And when the decomposers eat this stuff, they excrete. And what they excrete is plant food. So that's where we got to at the moment. Bearing in mind this is 200 litres of fill for these buckets, because this was a 200 litre barrel, I think 210 litre barrel. So there's a lot of compost in there. Last layer on each of them is going to be the same mixture as before. So it's a bit of grow bag and a bit of manure, plus this, which is topsoil. So topsoil as in dug out of the ground somewhere and sieved and probably processed and mixed with other stuff. But this has got some mineral content, so this has got sands and clays and things in it, and it's just, this will make it more into soil than compost. So this is yeah, we'll have a good bit in there. And this tends to contain more of the kind of mineral nutrients that, you know, the little bits and pieces like iron and calcium and sulfur and those sorts of things that are in natural soil that plants need. The micronutrients, I suppose, they're probably in terms of plant nutrition. So that's that one. Let's see if I can tip this, actually, because shoveling it in is a bit of a problem. So. Perfect. Okay, I'm not going to fill more than that, I don't think, because otherwise the rain will just splash it all out. So I've still got to do the top layer on this one, and then we're done. I'm going to water that down because it's very, very dry. And then I've got to decide what I'm going to plant in it. So if you've been screaming potatoes at the screen, you may have a good point. I don't know if it's a bit too late in the year to plant potatoes, but we might do. So potatoes could be an option. I do intend to treat these buckets as raised beds. So I'm not going to tip these out ever. I'm going to dig things out of here. I'm going to grow things in the top of them. I'm going to treat these the same as I do with these raised beds. I don't ever empty these out completely. I just treat them as a bit of soil. So out and about, in amongst the cowslips and buttercups and daisies and things, I did see some ashy mining bees. Am I going to be lucky and show you one? Nope, they've all gone to ground. Okay, typical. As soon as I turn the camera on, they're gone. Well, we'll try again another time. I had a whole load of them around me while I was working on these bins. Okay, I see one. Now, that insect buzzing around down there is an ashy mining bee. Wow, there it is. They don't stay still very long. There it goes. It's just disappearing down into ground, into its burrow. So it recognised its burrow probably by the flowers and the pattern of leaves and everything around here. If we make too many changes here, they can have trouble finding their burrows. So we have at the very least 2 species of mining bees in this garden, and I'm just creeping up here on the other one. This is a tawny mining bee. Tawny because it's got a brownish overall colour. The other one we looked at just now was the ashy mining bee, which has got a greyish overall colour, the colour of ash, obviously. There we go, tawny mining bee. And it will stay very still now because it thinks my camera is a bird. Really difficult to actually film these going into their burrow because they just won't move if you get too close. They just drop to the ground and stop moving. Very predator sensitive. Now will be the time of year to keep an eye on this bit here. I've seen all sorts of bees going into naturally occurring crevices in walls and things in our garden. I haven't seen anything going in and out of the bee hotels just yet. They may not do. It may take a year of weathering before this thing is acceptable to insects. Okay, you're right. We should plant potatoes in these tubs. So these are 100-litre tubs. We should be able to plant 6 seed potatoes in each of these tubs, but I'm only going to plant 4. I've got 2 varieties. I've got this one, which is Nadine, which is a second early variety. And I've got this one, which is Cara, which is a main crop variety. So this one will harvest later. We're too late now to plant first earlies. Potatoes are divided into 3 broad categories: first and second earlies and main crop. So we'll plant main crop Cara, second early Nadine, and these will just go about sort of maybe twice their own depth in the soil with the eyes pointing upwards. Putting them kind of around the middle here because I'm going to grow a catch crop around the edge. So these potatoes will take a while to do anything. We have the opportunity to plant something else around the edge while we're waiting for the potatoes to happen. Potatoes happen? Is that the right word? Grow. These have already been chitted, which means basically they've been allowed to sprout. That's it. And I'm going to grow pak choi around the outside. And by the time the potatoes are up and growing, we'll have harvested most of this. So here we go again, these seed snails, if that's what they are indeed called. You can see the plants there. They've got this wonderful deep root system already developed. So I'm just going to slot them in, drop them into nice deep holes all the way around the edge. Right, and you surely know the routine by now. After we plant, we give them a little water in to settle the roots. Some of the seedlings, you can't see them very well. There are two different varieties of pak choi here. There's a bronze one and a pale green one. And the bronze one, you can't see the leaves very easily against the soil, but they are there. That just moves that clod of earth off the top of that one. Yeah, there's a bronze one there. And I'm going to live dangerously here. Yes, this is what constitutes living dangerously for me. I've got a few radishes left. I'm going to plant them in the middle. They are where the potatoes are going to come up, but these should be ready to harvest as radishes if it works. I've never grown radishes and transplanted them before, but then I don't usually have success with radishes, so we'll see what happens. Okay, there we go. So just a few in the middle where I know the potatoes aren't. The potatoes are in that sort of mid area. There's a gap in the middle. These radishes are pretty quick growing. Hopefully we'll be harvesting those radishes before the potatoes are up, or at least before they've got very far. This is called catch cropping, where basically you just see a bit of bare soil and you plant a fast growing crop to exploit a little gap in between other crops. So it's raining very nicely now, and hopefully it will continue all day and I won't need to do any further watering.
Okay, so I have a request here. You might be able to help me with growing peppers. I can grow most things from seed quite successfully. Tomatoes have done okay this year. Courgettes, great. Chard, maybe. Peppers, I have trouble germinating and raising seedlings. So I've planted two different varieties of pepper here, cayenne and Spangles. Spangles hasn't even come up. I've planted other varieties and kept them humid in bags and put them in warm places like the airing cupboard and on sunny windowsills, because I read somewhere that peppers need a bit more heat to germinate. But the ones that have germinated are out here in the unheated greenhouse. So we got 3 seedlings of cayenne. 2 I've already potted on, and that one I still need to prick out. I've tried different composts. I've tried different levels of heat, different amounts of watering. Rather than ask you what I'm doing wrong, because obviously I can't describe all of the variables and maybe you're not familiar with the kind of compost I'm using. So the question is, if you're successful at growing peppers, what's your trick? What are you doing to raise your pepper seedlings that maybe I'm not thinking of? Please do let me know in the comments. I do read the comments. It's probably too late for that advice this year, but I would appreciate your advice on raising peppers. I'm probably just going to go and buy some seedling plants from the garden centre this year, but next year I want to grow peppers from seed and I want to succeed at it. So let me know in the comments if you're very successful at growing peppers from seed. Please let me know what's your trick. And it occurs to me that your trick, you may not even think it's a trick. You might just be doing what is normal for you. So what I'm asking is actually, okay, how deep do you plant your seeds? What kind of compost do you use? How much water, and what watering method? Do you water from the bottom or the top? Do you keep them covered to keep the humidity up, or do you let air get to them? What temperature? What kind of place do you put them when you want them to germinate? Just, I suppose, try to step through your whole process in as much detail as you can, please. So my courgette plants, which we looked at a moment ago, need to be planted out because they're getting... Shut up. Oi, hey, quiet. Daddy's talking. So my courgette plants, which we looked at just a moment ago, need to be planted out. They're coming out of the bottom of the pots. So, but it's not quite warm enough outside to risk them outside straight away. So I've built a cloche over this plot where they're going. It's just a piece of reinforced clear tarp. Not completely clear, obviously, because this mesh does block some of the light, but it'll be fine for a few days. So we've got that just over those metal hoops, which look like that when they're not covered, and the tarp is just way too big, but I've got it rolled up round the back here. So whenever I want to, I can just lift this up and peg it back, which I will do during the day, because the purpose here is to try to harden off the plants that we put in here, try to acclimatise them to the outdoor conditions. So at night I'll come and cover this up to keep them warm, or at least to stop them getting the chill, and In the daytime, I can uncover them. If it rains, I can let the rain get on them. So that's the plan. So something like that. We're going to have, that's the 2 green courgettes. I'll save a space here for the yellow courgette. I'm going to grow 4 plants here. So 3 courgettes and 1 cucumber. This is a ridge cucumber, outdoor cucumber that we bought this one, £2.50. We could have bought a packet of seeds for the same price and grown 1 plant from that, I suppose. So yeah, here's the general plan. There's a slight mound, a slight ridge here where I've dug in some manure, some well-rotted manure in the bottom of this soil underneath this bank. And once the courgette plants get their roots down into that, they should really love it. But what I'll do first, just get a little bit of this fish blood and bone. It is exactly what it sounds like. It is ground up bone meal, fish meal and dried blood from byproduct of various industries. I'll mix that into the soil so it's not too strong in any particular one place, and then I'll put a little bit of the compost back. I'll have this plant out of the pot, and we're going to see. The way I gauge whether it's ready to plant out or not is I'm looking for roots coming out of the bottom of the pot in the holes. So, and I can see them there. So yeah, we've got a nice, not overcrowded root ball. I will just tease those roots out a little bit. I don't think it makes any difference really. And then that can go in there. And I'll just show you how that's going to end up in a minute. So you probably can't see that actually, so I'm just going to move the camera. So then we just press that down into place, and I'm creating like a little bowl around the base of the plant here, so that when we water it, the water won't just run off the ridge. So water, rainwater especially as well, later in the year, will collect into this slight sort of bowl like shape and will tend to get to the roots of the plant. Something like that. Also, this bowl will protect the plant from wind rock. So when the plant's developing, they're very, very susceptible to wind rock. And so if we get strong winds and that plant gets shaken about, it snaps all of the little roots around the base of the stem. And in my experience, once that's happened, the plants just never take off. The other risk here is slugs and snails. Slugs and snails will love to come and eat that juicy, delicious little bud there. In fact, I can see flower buds there. They won't come to anything because the first few flowers usually don't, but these plants are ready to get going. But yeah, slugs and snails will love to come and eat that growing tip there. Juicy little sweet tender shoot. So I am going to put a few slug pellets around. So the soil here is just really free draining, but we'll give these a nice water in just to settle the roots and also just to moisten the soil all the way around this planting hole. There's no chance of these getting waterlogged. This soil has got so much loose stuff in it that it drains very, very freely. But the mulch should keep everything moist, and especially once the leaves cover this plot. So there we go, good water in, and I'll give them half a can every day probably for the first few days until they get their roots spread out into this soil. At night I'll come and cover this up. I'll pull this back down, cover it up. We're past frosts now, but just to keep the chill off them at night, and then in the daytime we'll uncover them so the full sunlight can get on the leaves. Just a few slug pellets. These are iron phosphate, so not some dreadful forever chemical. In fact, iron phosphate is basically plant food. It's just if slugs eat this, it will kill them. And it's mixed in a bait that is particularly attractive to them. I think it's mixed with bran or something like that, which they will enjoy eating. But anyway, so just a few slug pellets. Don't really like doing too much in the way of chemicals in the garden, but like I say, iron phosphate, not really terrible at all. Not as bad as slug pellets used to be. And if we don't do that, these plants will just get munched.
I see you, rat. 2 rats. Brown rats in our woods. They say that you're never more than 10 yards away from a rat. That is definitely the case in this house. We don't have them in the house, although that's a thing we might need to think about. I don't think they'd come in when Eva's here, but yeah, there's a brown rat, and there was another one just further up on the wood pile. They live in the woods. They are wildlife, not vermin. Underneath this temporary polytunnel, I've got my courgettes growing. Most days, because we're way past the danger of frost now, most days I've been just lifting this up halfway and pegging it back so they can have full sunlight during the day. This morning I haven't done that because it's been quite breezy and these plants are still getting established, so I'm leaving this closed today. You know, as you can see, it's a little bit breezy. I want to give them a chance to get started and strong before I expose them to the full range of the elements. Once they're a little bit older, the base of the stem turns woody and stiffens, and they become a lot stronger and resistant to wind. But in this early stage, they can be quite vulnerable, and so we're protecting them just for today. This is obviously blocking some of the sunlight, this thing, but it is letting probably enough through that the plants will be okay, especially if it's not every single day. And I think the problem I've been having getting plants to germinate, these tomatoes were grown as seedlings. I think the problem I'm having with my seedlings is possibly down to the compost, because these have doubled in size since I put them in there in just a couple of days. They're only still quite tiny, but they are still ahead of the naturally occurring weedy tomatoes that are coming up of their own accord from discarded and lost seeds last year. You can see a tomato must have fallen here intact, and that's all the seeds from that tomato growing. I'm going to weed those out. We're not having feral tomatoes this year. But yeah, so once I put things in the soil and they can get their roots outside of the root ball of the potting compost, they're taking off really well. So that does tend to indicate to me that there is something wrong with my choice of potting compost this year, and that is the thing that's possibly inhibiting the vigorous growth of my seedlings. I'm growing at least 7 varieties of peppers this year. I've got some more coming along downstairs, but let's just have a quick rundown. We've got a variety called Orange Spice, Basket of Fire, this is tiny little chilies, Paragon, Yellow Bullhorn, Fresno, Marmora, and Scotch Bonnet. So quite a nice variety of hot and sweet in various degrees of heat. Plus downstairs I've got some cayenne coming along, and a variety called Ico Ico. Plus possibly some more as well, depending on whether they come up or not. But I haven't got any more room to plant more chili plants in here, probably. Well, I probably could have another row along the front here. They probably don't mind being that crowded. There's a bit of room at the end there. I'm hoping to grow another one of these Capsicum flexuosum and have that there. But I will grow some chilies in pots, and then I might plant them out in the vegetable patch once the broad beans are finished. So yeah, broad beans in 2 stages of maturity. These are the ones I planted just recently. These are the taller ones, the ones that have been here and overwintered. So these will fruit first, and we'll have beans on these, and we'll harvest these, and then when they're fully harvested we'll take the plants out. So there might be a little bit of space here that I can put a chili plant, if I've been raising it in a pot, in here and grow it for like the second half of the summer. The leeks are all doing marvelously. They are all bolting now, and I'm just going to let them. So they've all produced, or a lot of them have produced scapes. I think I can see 4 here, maybe 5. I'm going to let them do that. I'm going to let them flower because it's great for the bees. And when they flowered, so this great big one here, that wouldn't be much use for cooking now if we were to pick that. But once that's flowered, the bulb at the bottom will divide, and it will provide like 6 or 7 small
leek plants that I can divide and replant. And one of the benefits of growing the leeks like this, so I'm growing these as perennials now, when I want to harvest them, I just cut them at the soil level, harvest the top part, let the root regrow and divide. But one of the real benefits of growing them like this is I don't have to worry about whether it's the right time to plant leeks, or whether I've planted them to the right depth, or what, you know, whether I should be starting or whether I'm too late or whatever. The leeks, because this is their permanent position, the leeks decide when it's time to grow, you know, when it's time to put their leaves up, when it's time to die back, and to a certain extent they will decide how deep they want to be in the soil as well, because as they divide they will find their own depth. Young leek plants have contractile roots, so they send their roots down into the soil and then the roots kind of just pull the rest of the plant down. While I was moaning and complaining about the germination of my pepper seeds, more have come up. So I've got a few cayenne seedlings here. They're still really quite weedy, but they are starting to take off. And I am finding that when I move them from the seed compost into the pot, they seem to take off a bit better. So that suggests maybe something composty. The other thing is maybe patience. Maybe I just don't have enough patience, because this is my Capsicum flexuosum seed tray, and I've got, well, something came up there, but I got a feeling that's not a pepper, and something else came up there, and to be honest I'm a bit suspicious of that too, but I'm going to pop that one up and see what happens to it. It doesn't look the same as these pepper seedlings. These have pointy leaves. Their first seed leaves are pointy, and generally their leaves are pointy, but this is a different species of pepper. So I mean, I might try and prick that one out, but it's such a weedy little thing. This one into there. Yeah, I mean, I might as well try. So it might be that I have to blend my own compost or something like that, my own seed compost, because I'm struggling with any kind of commercial compost. And I think the problem might be related to the lack of soil in it. These are all peat-free, wood fibre based composts. And I'm not really sure plants want to grow in this medium. Plants really want to grow in soil, and so I think coaxing them to grow in something that's not soil might be a problem. I don't know. Still, very much value and welcome your comments, suggestions, critique, feedback on seed germination. It's all valuable input. Okay, and then these I'm going to very, very carefully water them. I don't hold out very much hope of that one surviving, but we'll see what happens. And this one, I think these might turn out to be weeds that were in the compost, but we'll see. It shouldn't be. I think these composts are typically sterilised. And then just to stop those completely desiccating on their first day out of the bag, put that over the top like that. It's only loosely covering it, so that will give them a little bit of a phased introduction to the air inside the greenhouse. So I've got another one of my pepper seedlings has now come up, which again reinforces the notion that perhaps my problem is patience and actually timing and planning as well. I should have started these earlier. Actually, I think that might be a bit too moist as well. But this is a Scotch bonnet that I saved the seed of. This is not one I bought in a packet. This is one I bought as a pepper on the market, and I've saved the seed from it and planted it. So this one's different, potentially a slightly different variety. But yeah, I probably should have started earlier. One of the problems I've got now is that, okay, I have got some small seedlings of peppers. They're quite small and underdeveloped for the time of year, middle of May now, and really I should have bigger plants than this. But also the plants I've got up in the greenhouse are the ones I bought as plants. They're doing fine, but I've now got no space for planting my peppers in the greenhouse, the ones that are germinated. So these I think I'll have to bring on in pots, and I might continue to grow them in pots, or we'll have to find some other space for them in the garden. Two little seedlings that came up in my Capsicum flexuosum seed tray are continuing to develop, albeit slowly. I still don't think those are pepper seedlings. Pepper seedlings look like this, but I'm going to give them a chance because, as I say, it's a different species, flexuosum, so I can't remember what the seedlings look like. I grew some last year, but I can't remember what they look like. They may be different. I also bought some asparagus plug plants. I wanted to grow asparagus in the garden and I left it too late, and I couldn't find any viable asparagus crowns. So I bought some plug plants. These are weedy little things, but I'm going to grow them most of this year in pots. They'll probably end up in bigger pots than this fairly soon, once the roots fill out. And we've decided we're going to move the rhubarb. So we're going to move the rhubarb to a plot that's in dappled shade behind the greenhouse. And then that rhubarb plot is going to be asparagus. We've got to wait 3 years before we can pick it. So we've got to let the plant build up its strength before we can harvest any. So yeah, I think the rhubarb's going to go in here. We'll have to do some work on the soil here, because I think it is just too sunny here. It does really, really well in spring and it comes up really nice and strong and vibrant, but it dries out a bit too well here and the rhubarb suffers. So I think a little bit more shade behind the greenhouse and it'll probably enjoy that more. In other news, my potatoes are all up. So these are potatoes emerging here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. My second early variety and my main crop. Now these potatoes may start racing away now and may outcompete these radishes and pak choi. The pak choi around the outside might stand a better chance of persisting because it grows quick, and it won't be very long before we can harvest that. The radishes, well, we'll see. And that one's already starting to form a little root. We might be lucky and get the radishes before the potatoes completely overwhelm them, but we'll see. It really was a bit of a gamble putting those in there. Tree babies are doing well. So these are the walnuts. They've got proper leaves on them now, apart from this one which is struggling, but it's going to get there. It's got some little shoots. Chestnuts, again, have got a few true leaves. And an interesting thing has happened in my quince pot. I thought I only had these 2 seedlings coming up out of my quinces, but there's another one. So when I moved this into this pot, I must have moved a seed that was just sprouting, and there it is, it's coming up. So I got 2 quince seedlings in that one, and I think that might be a second one in there. No, it's not. That's a different plant. That is just a weed. So we got 3 quince seedlings. I may have to prick that one out and put it in a separate pot and sink that one in here. I've got here a waste knot box from Lidl. These cost £1.50, and it's basically anything that's about to go out of date, or perhaps they're overstocked on. They tend to throw in these boxes. You pay £1.50 and you take your pick. They have usually an assortment of different types of things. So I've got this one. Let's see what we got. Bag of parsnips. Expiry date is where is the best before date on these? Can't see a best before date. I thought it would be here, but it's not. Anyway, yeah, bag of parsnips. They look pretty good actually. Pack of strawberries, those will need using today. They are okay. There's probably a few in there have gone a little bit mushy. A leek. There's going to be some usable stuff somewhere in the middle there. Bunch of spring onions. Looking a bit sad, but I'm sure we can get something useful out of that. 4 lemons. 5 limes. These seem alright actually. They'll probably stand a few days. 4 potatoes, basil, a couple of rather worn out looking lettuce, and a red pepper. So I'm going to make a soup, I think, and I'm going to use really just these ingredients plus maybe herbs from the garden, salt and pepper, and a stock cube. So what's going to go in there? Well, parsnips and potatoes I think would be quite nice. Roasted red pepper. I'm going to go and take this in the... Oh, I see, that's why that's in there. It's got a bit of damage. I'm going to go and roast that with my blowtorch. Certainly basil will be nice in there. Some of those leaves are a little bit dried up, but there'll be something usable in there. And the parsnips, I think. So I've got... This is just a plumber's gas blowtorch. And I'm going to burn this pepper all over. And we're just searing the skin. This will impart a smoky flavour to the flesh of the pepper. It will slightly cook the pepper as well, but it won't burn the inside bits, which is the bit we're going to use. You can do this probably under the grill or on a gas flame, on a gas hob. I don't have a gas hob anymore, so I can't do it there. I always found that the blowtorch was the best method of doing this, actually, because you can see what you're doing. You can see which bits need a bit more toasting and which bits are done. Okay, that's it. So this is steaming hot now. I don't know if you can see the steam. Into a bag, and we'll just leave that closed like that for that steam to soften that charred skin. Oh, I meant to say, it did also include this bag of 3 large onions in that box. I put the box aside and went outside to plant my seed potatoes, which I bought on the same trip out. And Jenny had started putting things away, so I just had to retrieve everything, put it back in the box, and I forgot about those onions. So yes, that's the assortment of what we got, included the onions. Anyway, this leek. So yeah, it's not the best looking leek, but we'll find some usable material in there. Let's give it a little trim. So I think we are going to have to lose some of the top. And we are also looking at, you know, that's no good, that leaf there, but we're down there to probably a usable one. Yeah, no, I think we might just lose one more. They're just a bit leathery at this point. So there we go, that much usable leek. And it has actually got the basal plate on there, which is unusual for leeks. Often they're trimmed and you lose this basal plate. We could cut that base off and grow it in the garden. Not going to, because I've got leeks in the garden anyway. But I'll do my usual trick, which is slit it lengthways so that we can get in there and wash out that dirt. So those leeks are going to go in a frying pan. But first, I'm going to take a couple of these parsnips. They're a bit horrible and slimy, but they'll wash up fine. Kind of on the borderline of going off, but they'll be fine. I'm just going to do that. So the idea with these is we'll pair off some really nice little strips of parsnip. We will get to a point where it's no longer possible to shave any more off, and I'll maybe just throw that last little bit of trimming in the freezer and we'll use it when we make stock. Yeah, that little bit there, I'm just going to throw that in my trimmings box in the freezer. Right, so those bits of parsnip there, should have used a bigger board. Right, those are going to go in the pan first, and we'll fry those in a bit of oil and try to get them to crisp up a little bit, just take on a bit of colour. Right, spring onions, same story with the leeks, but these really are kind of past their best. But there will be something in here we can use. The outer skins, the outer leaves have gone pretty horrible and slimy. But I'll peel and wash those off, and there'll be something usable in there. So yeah, that outside bit comes off. And if I trim, well, here, and here, and there, that's all perfectly nice, usable spring onion. Okay, and these I think probably will go in with the leeks. They're quite a similar thing. They're a little bit more oniony than leeks. I sometimes think that leeks are... I love leeks, but I think sometimes leek and onion is a bit nicer just because it's got that little bit more tang. So those will go in together as soon as those parsnips have started to brown a little bit. Right, so the parsnips are toasted now, so those leeks can go in. I had to go and get another stem of lovage. It was a bit tough, that one. I think this one's a bit more tender. Yeah. So I'm lucky to have lovage in the garden, but you could use celery. Similar flavour, although this is a bit stronger, and it has a hint of aniseed to it as well, which I really like. That's going to go in the pan too. So as you can see, there's a bit of browning on those parsnips. That's perfect, just what I want. Leeks have only just gone in, and I'll fry this until the leeks have started to tenderise. This roasted red pepper, I'm just going to scrape the skin off like this. This comes off really easily now that it's steamed in that bag after charring it. Makes the whole thing a lot sweeter. I'll just have a side off of that, I think. And take out the pith as well. Some people find that bit bitter. And also where this is partly cooked, it's already starting to soften and sweeten. Have that cut into little... I'm just going to give things a stir. And just have that pepper cut into little diamonds, perhaps. That's going to go in the pan too. The rest of that pepper, I'll probably process it down, put it in a little jar or a little pot in the fridge. We'll use it for something else at some point in the day or two. Just one of these potatoes, I think. And I'm going to go back to my regular peeler because that's where my muscle memory is for this task. I've just had to take the pan off the heat actually because it was just toasting a bit more than I wanted it to. So sometimes these potatoes, when they're a little bit over like this, you know, obviously they're in that box for a reason. You might find that they have little discoloured bits under the skin, but we'll just dig those out and peel them off. This feels to be a waxy variety of potato. It's quite a solid yellow flesh. So I'm going to cut the potato into small cubes. And that'll go in the pan, and then I think we'll add the stock. Perhaps a tiny bit more toasting than I wanted there really, but we'll go with it. Everything is softened nicely. Potatoes in, just probably half a vegetable stock cube, which will contain all of the salt I need for this recipe. Crumble that in. And I've got about 300 ml of cold water. Let's see how much that looks like. Yeah, a bit more than that, I think, maybe another 100 ml. And then we'll turn that up and bring that to a simmer. And I was going to put this in a saucepan and so on, but I think we'll probably just cook everything in the pan just to save on a bit of washing up. I'm going to bring that to the boil, simmer it until those potatoes are soft, and then what else have we got to put in? Well, have you ever cooked lettuce? So there is a tendency, I think, especially where I live, to regard lettuce as a salad vegetable only, something you only eat raw. But you absolutely can cook with lettuce, and a lot of people do. This lettuce has really wilted a little bit at the top end there. Yeah, there's rather a lot of outside leaves here, which we're going to have to waste. I could have cut the end off, but I want to do something else with this lettuce, which is sear it. So I'm going to cut that like that, and like that, and then I'm going to dry fry those in a different pan. Okay, I think that's hot now. Just going to put them on their cut sides on that pan. Do this on a charcoal barbecue and it's absolutely sublime. You wouldn't think that lettuce grilled, well, if you've never tried it, the flavour will surprise and I hope delight you. It's looking about right. Okay, so I'm just going to flip them over onto their other cut side now. Now, if they'll go. They make tongs for this reason. So there's a little bit that was stuck on the pan. I don't know what it is about just slightly cooking it like that. It just gives it a whole dimension of flavour that's rather special. Right, I reckon those are probably done. Let's have a look. Yeah. So we'll take them out. Let that pan cool off. The soup's not far off done now. I'm just going to move it around, make sure the potatoes all get a turn in the middle. I'll know it's done basically when those potatoes are falling apart, when I can crush them easily with the corner of the spatula. About another couple of minutes, I reckon. So I'm just going to find a few nice leaves of this basil. This is not the normal sort of basil. This looks like a different variety. This is not the one I'm most familiar with. Anyway, we'll find a few nice leaves of this basil. I'm just going to snip that in there really fine. Don't listen to people who say you must always tear basil. Fine, if you're putting it in a salad, it's a good idea to tear it, because otherwise you can see actually where I've cut it, the edge of the leaf has gone really dark. It can be quite unsightly in a salad. If you're cooking it, it really doesn't matter, because it's all going to go like that. In fact, if you're cooking it, it's best to cut it as finely as you can, because that's how the flavour comes out. Right, this soup I'm pretty sure is done. Let's just check a piece of potato. Yeah, and just crush it with my thumb. Taste for season. Literally does not need anything. Well, I say it doesn't need anything, but that's perhaps not strictly true. I'm just going to dish some of this up into these two bowls here. Dishing up out of a frying pan like this is not the easiest thing to do. So there we go, 2 bowls of random vegetable soup. Now, you might look at these things and think, oh, how do you know how to combine flavours? You don't. There's really almost no chance of getting this wrong. Just throw a bunch of things in a pan and cook it. It's going to be soup, and it's going to be good. So we will serve those with their charred lettuce garnish. And just as a little finishing flavour, so these limes, I think these were waxed, so I've scrubbed one of them, because we have a little bit of lime zest on there. And also, just a little squeeze of lime juice, just to brighten that up. Random budget vegetable soup. I'm going to serve Jenny's and then I'll come back and taste mine. Okay, now bearing in mind this is going to be super, super hot. It's remarkable how such simple things as vegetables just roasted and then boiled a little bit can taste so wonderful. Good soup. Right, now this charred lettuce, especially with the lime, I like that. Good soup. So what we've got left over after this, we've got some strawberries, which I will have to process today. I'll have to do something with these strawberries. So I'll probably just chop them up. I might squeeze a bit of lime juice over them, a bit of sugar, and they'll stand a couple more days in the fridge like that. 3 more potatoes, we'll think of something to do with them. There's another lettuce, there are these 3 big onions, loads more lemons and limes. This basil, I might actually try seeing if I can get some of this to root. Not bad for a £1.50 veg box. So yeah, this basil, I mean, it's not completely dead. I wonder if we can get it to root. I'll probably just have to trim off a bit of stalk at the bottom. I'll lose some of the larger leaves because that's just going to cause the plants to lose moisture. So we'll just pull off some of those larger leaves, making sure we don't damage the bud. Bit of foil over a glass. Just poke that into a glass of water. And we'll leave that for a week or 2 and see if we can get some roots growing on that. It might come back, you never know. That'll do. Let's see what happens with that. And all those leaves I pulled off, we could use those. Well, most of them. So it's the following day and that basil has really perked up very nicely. So I have hopes that is going to take root. Here's an interesting charity shop find that I picked up today for £2. And it's a gravy separator jug. So this is a jug, it's got a channel that goes all the way down to the bottom there. I don't know if you can see that. And so when you pour, it pours from the bottom. That's what comes up out the spout. Any fat that's floating on top here, or I suppose anything else that's floating on top here, is held back in the main chamber. It does need a little bit of a clean, and that might well be why it's where it is. In fact, it's pretty grimy and horrible in there. It seems to have the previous owner's gravy still on it. That's not a problem. I can clean that, and also I can keep this clean because I've got a selection of cleaning brushes and things to make sure I get that channel properly cleaned all the way down to the bottom. That will not be a problem. But yeah, no branding or anything on it. You can see the little marks from the trivet that was there when it was fired. Yeah, don't know what brand or anything that is, but a lovely little gravy separator jug. That will be quite useful to me because I quite often have to separate meat juices. I tend to use my basting pipette just in a Pyrex jug, but it's not always very convenient to do that. You can buy separator jugs made of glass where they had the spout just coming out from the bottom of the jug. Very, very fragile, the glass ones, and so they make them out of plastic these days, which is more resilient but also still quite prone to breakage. But also, when you're putting really hot fat and juices into plastic, eventually that plastic will craze or perhaps go sticky. This hopefully won't, but this is going to need a good clean up. So I'm going to go and do that now. Give it a good scrub, get it all cleaned up and nice, and then we can use it. Okay, so first thing we've got to do with this jug is give it a really good soak. So I'm just going to put it in a bowl of water. Make sure it's full to the brim. In fact, I'll top that up so that the whole thing is immersed. So we'll give that a really good soak. That'll loosen up everything that's on there. I mean, I imagine I could just scrub it straight away, but just giving it 10 minutes soak will loosen up and soften those ancient gravies that are on there. And then I can just use, I've got an assortment of brushes here, all sorts of different things I can use to get into all the little crevices and give it a good scrub. So yeah, here we go. After a few minutes of soaking, that little bit on the front there just scrubs off. I think that's actually a little chip, but it's on the outside so it doesn't matter. And then this residue on the inside is also just coming off. So I don't think it's actually going to need a, I don't think the process here is particularly stringent. It's just a case of getting in there and making sure it's done. Okay. Now we'll use the finer one because we can get that around the corner at the bottom. You can bend it a little bit and we'll get it around the corner and into the jug like that. Just remove anything stubborn at the bottom there. Okay, pretty good. Little rinse and drain and dry. And then we'll give that a try. I think we'll probably try this out in a different video. I think probably in one of my batch cooking videos we'll give this a test run. Welcome back to Insufficiently Weird Stuff in a maybe you can. This is the part of the show where we look at things that I bought, intending to put on weird stuff in a can, and then when I got them home I thought things like, is that sufficiently weird? Is it even a can? Sometimes I just go ahead and put those on their own episode and it appears in Weird Stuff in a Can, and we all argue about whether it is a can or whether it's weird. This time it's in the random stuff video because I decided it wasn't really all that weird. It's Summer's Gourmet Popcorn. And I've got 4 flavours here. I got this at Pound Stretcher. So we've got sour cream and onion, tomato, which I think is a weird flavour for a popcorn, barbecue, which again, may be a weird flavour, and this is the one I thought was the weirdest flavour, Bombay mix. So ingredients, I'll just read one of them because they're all going to be very similar, bar 1 or 2 minor variations. Corn, sugar, palm oil, dextrose, sour cream and onion seasoning which is maltodextrin, salt, sugar, onion powder, garlic powder, parsley pieces, flavour enhancers, monosodium glutamate, disodium inosinate, and then it's got inosinate separately there. Acidity regulator, lactic acid, calcium lactate, citric acid, anti-caking agent, tricalcium phosphate, palm oil, colouring, turmeric extract, salt. So yeah, the difference is the flavouring, which is actually not that different. So for Bombay mix, the flavouring is curry powder. In the barbecue, the flavouring is sugar, salt, spices, flavour enhancers. And in the tomato, the flavouring is tomato powder. Now, let's see, this one's tomato powder, flavour enhancers, monosodium L-glutamate, disodium 5-guanylate. Interesting. No, actually, they are different. They are different. So the anti-caking agent in this one is tricalcium phosphate. The anti-caking agent in this one includes tricalcium phosphate, but also includes silicon dioxide, very finely ground sand, essentially, but obviously as a much finer powder. So yeah, they are different. For this one, for example, has got soya in it, soy sauce. You know what? I will put all 4 of these ingredients panels on the screen. In fact, they've already been there while I've been wittering away, and you can play spot the difference. So, nutrition information is there on the screen if you're interested, and we'll get on with tasting. These look like they might be made for the Japanese market, but they are made in Middlesex, or are they made in Ireland? It doesn't say where they're made, but those are just a couple of offices by the look of it. So, sour cream and onion, which I think is probably the tamest of the flavours. Now, bearing in mind that the second ingredient here is sugar. So this is sweet popcorn, but with a savoury flavour as well. So there's sour cream and onion. And it doesn't really have a lot of, yeah, it kind of smells not even as much scent as you'd get from opening a bag of sour cream and onion crisps or opening a tube of sour cream and onion Pringles. Crunchy, and there is like a sugar shell on it. That is actually rather good. I wouldn't say it's particularly sour cream and onion strong, but the savoury, salty plus the sweet is good. And it has got a cheesy, herby flavour to it. I'm just realised I'm going to need a glass of water as a palate cleanser. Back in a moment. Okay. So of the remaining ones, well, I think I need to rank these in order of weirdness. I think barbecue is less weird than tomato for popcorn, even though barbecue flavours often include tomato. So, barbecue is next. This one has got a kind of meaty smell to it. Perhaps the disodium guanylate, whatever that is. Kind of smoky flavour. Has it got artificial smoke in here? Barbecue flavouring from milk. I imagine that barbecue flavouring must be some sort of caramelised thing, because there is a smokiness to this. Also, just a little bit of chili heat there, which is nice. I imagine that must be included in spices. I like that. More than I like that. Next, tomato. Well, they don't look as red as they do on the pack. And there's just the distinct ketchup smell when I opened it. Has it got acetic acid in there? No, citric acid. It does smell a little bit vinegary. Yep, unmistakable tomato flavour there. And it's quite a good one. It's like a sweetish ketchup flavour. Yeah, nice. And finally, Bombay mix. I would be disappointed if that wasn't bright yellow. Not strongly scented of curry. And I wouldn't say it tastes of Bombay mix as much as it tastes of just curry. Yeah, Bombay mix is obviously a curry flavour, but this doesn't specifically taste like Bombay mix, and that's probably because it's got the corn in it rather than the gram flour noodles and things that are part of the flavour profile of Bombay mix. Bombay mix tastes like what it is, not just because of the spices. It tastes the peanuts, the fried lentils, the gram flour noodles, all of the bits and bobs. Again, pleasant little kick of heat from that, little kick of chili heat, which is nice. Not by any means hot, not by any definition fiery, but nice. Ranking, I think. We'll rank these. So I am going to say that... Oh, this is difficult. Okay. First place, Bombay mix, because I think I do like a bit of curry flavour. Next, tomato. Following that, barbecue. And bringing up the rear, the sour cream and onion, which is just... It's not as distinct a sour cream and onion flavour as most of the other sour cream and onion things I've tasted. All there is now to determine is what happens if you take one piece of each and eat them together. What does that taste like? Good. And unlike some of the other things where I've mixed drink flavours and you end up seemingly subtracting flavour from each other, these do add. But some of the subtle nuances are lost. The curry is lost. The tomato and the barbecue and the sour cream combine and add quite well. The curry is a little bit lost in there. Let's just try that again. Yeah, definitely losing the curry. But we could do things like combine the curry and the tomato. And have we got kind of Rogan Josh? I mean, not really, but sort of. Or we could combine this, the sour cream, the cheesy sour cream and the tomato. And have we got pizza? Again, not really. These are all really good, by the way. I'm thoroughly enjoying these. So, 79 pence per tube, and that is 70 grams. So, basically about a penny per gram of popcorn, which is not fantastic value. Popcorn is super, super cheap, but these are nice. These are really tasty. And I think, you know, if you're going to have a party or something, putting out a few bowls of flavoured popcorn, what's nice about them is that they aren't just savoury. They are like a sweet, sugary popcorn, but with savoury spiced flavours. And that does make them very enjoyable. And as I say, I think the Bombay mix is best. Tomatoes next best. Barbecue's good. Sour cream and onion, I mean, it's still good, but it's just not as good as the others. And that concludes this segment of insufficiently weird stuff in a maybe can. So we had a whole day of rain, which has really made everything shoot up. Everything in these barrels is doing very well now. So this pak choy, I'd say we're almost at the point where we could harvest some of these, just thin them out and use the thinnings in a salad or something. The radishes, well, I can see the start of a root. Oh yeah, actually, do you know what? I think there's a radish down there. So I think we might have a little salad for lunch. First harvest from the garden. The courgettes, this is the first night that I've left them uncovered. So I put this mesh back round to keep next door's cats and our own dog off of here. But yeah, these are now staying out uncovered overnight. It's been a little bit chilly in May, so I didn't want to risk them outside until the temperature, nighttime temperature, was up. So 2 green courgettes. The yellow courgette's got a bit of catching up to do, but hopefully it'll do okay. The ridge cucumber is starting to shoot up now. I can see some flower buds on that. The chard that I planted along the front here is not doing all that well, so maybe that just won't come to anything, but always found it tricky to start that plant. Anyway, I think we will have a little salad from the garden. So in our salad, apart from the things I'm growing on purpose, we can have some of this. This is corn salad. We can have some of this. This is hairy bittercress. But yeah, I could maybe find a few other little things, a bit of chickweed perhaps. Hi little dog, you alright? You're happy, aren't you? Just watching the world go by? Yeah. So yeah, let's see if we can find... Well, that's a decent little radish, isn't it? So that one's worth picking. Just going to check if there's another one. No, that one's still a bit underdeveloped. That one too. Okay, have we got one over here maybe? Not quite as impressive as the first, but a usable radish. So it was definitely worth doing that catch cropping in there. And yeah, I think I'm just going to harvest probably a couple of these pak choi just to thin them out. So here we've got a cluster of plants. I'm going to have that one. Well, I'm a little bit reluctant to harvest these red ones because there aren't that many of them. That pale leafed one there, I think we can have that. Yeah, I think we'll have that one. Okay, so yeah, little bit of a salad there. Let's go and find some wild stuff to go with that. So corn salad, I think I might just have, well, I didn't actually mean to pull up the whole of that plant, but I did. So there we go, we'll have the whole of that plant. And I'll come back to the bittercress because that needs a little bit careful picking. Right, going to make a little salad, mostly from stuff from the garden. So things like this pak choi, which we seem to have in 3 different varieties, I'm just going to tear into there, at least with the leafy bits. And then when we get down to the little bits of stalk, I'll just give those a chop. These radishes, I wasn't expecting very much from this because I transplanted these radishes, and you're not really meant to do that, I don't think. But you can see how fast that's grown because look, that is the seed leaf. So it hasn't even, the seed leaves on these haven't even withered. They are still present. So for the radish, we'll just trim off the root. Slice it up. I cannot resist just tasting a bit of that now. Beautiful. Slightly peppery. Now these radish leaves, no reason why we can't use these. They are a little bit bristly underneath, some of these, but I'm just going to chop them. Just going to chop them up like that. Those little bristles on the leaves will just grab onto the dressing I'm going to put on there. Same thing with these pak choi. That's the seed leaves there. So that's how quickly they grew. And again, I'm just going to rip up the leafy bits, chop up the stalks. Now what's interesting here is that a lot of these plants are in the same botanical family. So we've got radishes, kind of in the mustard cabbage family, pak choi also in the same family, bittercress in the same family. So that's the bittercress. Now the bittercress, I've only picked the leaves because the flower, well actually I think I might have got one flower stalk in there. The flowers and the seed pods are the bitter part, but the leaves are sweet and peppery. This radish, maybe not quite so impressive, but still good. And yeah, when the radish foliage is this young and fresh, it's just a salad leaf. It's just a peppery, sort of mustardy salad leaf. Corn salad, a weed in my garden. So these are the little flower clusters. I'm just going to taste that now. Just a slightly nutty, leafy, green salad. Probably not going to bother with those stalks. A little bit fiddly to prepare. And plants like this, weeds basically, with a lot of tiny leaves, can tend to attract dirt. And so they need a really thorough rinse just to get all the grit and dirt off them. Now you might be looking at that citrus fruit there, because everything we put in here so far has been homegrown, but that's also homegrown. That's my little calamansi that I've got growing on the windowsill upstairs. So I thought we might use that for the dressing. Now we will have to have some ingredients in here that aren't homegrown, but I thought this little orange, we might just have a little bit of the zest sliced up like that, just a little bit of the skin, and then the juice, if I can get it out, into there. There's some olive oil in there, by the way. That's not enough acid in there for that. So we'll have a little bit of the sour brine from my pickled garlic buds. In fact, we'll probably have a couple of those chopped up in there as well. So this is my foraged wild garlic buds that I pickled in another video. Link here. Just chop those up into a very fine mix like that. Little bit of mustard, not homegrown, obviously. That will just help the oil to emulsify with those other liquids. So there we go, my little spring salad, mostly from the garden. I'm going to serve that alongside an omelette with some, this is frozen crow garlic that I foraged earlier in the year. That's going to go in my omelette. Okay, presentation rather far from perfect there, but it'll do. And then my garden salad, which we'll make a pile of right now. Okay, well, the salad is the star of the show, so let's try and get a forkful with a bit of everything on it. Not easy working around the camera, but we'll have a go. I wasn't tremendously sure about the combination of those wild garlic and the orange zest, but it really works. Really good. And there is just something very special about the first meal from the garden. Here's an interesting thing I found in a Polish supermarket the other day. Just different varieties of cup soups. So this one looks to be wild mushroom and onion. That one's beetroot. And this one looks like it's sort of goulash flavour. So onion, pepper, and I don't know if that's some sort of sausage there. I'm going to have the mushroom one today, actually. I can't read any of that, but the instructions are fairly clear. You put the thing in a mug, you put some hot water in it. So it's nice, I suppose, just to have a different variety of flavours. Let's have a little taste of that. It is really nice and mushroomy. I also bought these, which are, well, it says they're crisps, but they're crisps made from bread. So essentially croutons. And I think there's a few of those in there. These are hunting sausage flavour. And they are nice. A little bit on the crunchy side for me. But as croutons in soup, probably ideal. That's actually not a bad combination. I think we might taste those other two in a different video. Perhaps I'll take them out somewhere, actually. In fact, the idea of assembling a ration pack from a supermarket or delicatessen that isn't the standard English supermarket might be quite an interesting one. Anyway, that's everything we've got for today. I hope that's been interesting. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.